Blake Shelton walked into the Tonight Show studio expecting the same relaxed, upbeat atmosphere he'd always gotten from Jimmy Fallon's set. Every visit before this had been predictable in the best possible way. Jimmy laughing too hard at jokes that barely deserved a chuckle, a ridiculous game involving farm tools or rubber chickens or blindfolded food challenges, and a studio filled with fans holding neon signs that flashed messages like, "We love you, Blake," or "Marry me, Blake." That warm, silly, familiar energy usually wrapped around him the second he stepped through the doors. But tonight, something was off from the moment his boots hit the studio floor. The air felt heavy, like someone had forgotten to turn the tension down. A stagehand brushed past him so quickly their shoulder nearly collided with his. He mumbled something rushed under his breath, something Blake couldn't make out, but his tone was clipped and uneasy. Blake paused, eyebrows pulling together. That was odd. Then the producer approached, the same woman who always greeted him with a bubbly smile and a cheerful rundown of the night's schedule. But tonight, her smile was stretched too tight, almost forced, and her clipboard was clutched against her chest like a shield. Even stranger Jimmy, who typically ran toward Blake with arms wide open, laughing and performing some goofy dance move, only offered a stiff, hesitant wave from behind the curtain, before disappearing again. Blake slowed his walking pace. He scanned the room like he was trying to locate the source of a smell no one else noticed. "What in the world is going on?" he muttered quietly enough that only he could hear it. He waited a moment, half expecting someone to run up and say the show was behind schedule or a prop had broken or maybe the teleprompter was glitching. Something simple, something normal, but no explanation came. So he forced himself to brush it off and moved deeper toward the glowing, electric heartbeat of the stage. The band kicked into a lively country riff as soon as he neared the entrance. The crowd exploded into cheers, and for a moment the sound washed over him like it always did. Warm, familiar, energizing. Blake drew in a breath, plastered on his usual grin, and stepped into the spotlight with the same confident ease he'd carried for years. He shook Jimmy's hand, sat down in the guest chair, and leaned back, trying to settle into the rhythm he knew so well. But immediately, he picked up on something he couldn't ignore. Jimmy shuffled his queue of cards nervously, barely glancing up, his fingers tapping anxiously along the edges. That wasn't like him. Jimmy thrived on eye contact, on connection, on making guests feel completely at ease before the jokes even began. "Blake Shelton, everybody," Jimmy announced, a little too loudly, his voice slightly strained. "We love having you here. You always bring the fun." Blake nodded, forcing a chuckle. "Well, I try. Though, y'all look more nervous than a chicken in a coyote den tonight." The audience roared with laughter, but Jimmy's face stayed tight. Instead of the easy banter that always bounced between them, Jimmy cleared his throat and gripped one of his cards like it had weight to it. "So, Blake, he looked at the band, then the audience, and finally back at Blake with a hesitant glance. "There's something that's been circulating around the industry. Some talk." Blake felt the hairs on his arms lift, a strange prickle of warning running down his spine. "Talk," he repeated slowly, almost tasting the unease behind the word. Jimmy braced himself, exhaling like he was about to jump into cold water. "There's been a serious accusation going around that you've been, sabotaging another country artist's tour." The studio reacted instantly. Gasps erupted like a single burst of air from hundreds of mouths. The band cut off mid-note, instruments silenced in a jarring halt. Blake's smile evaporated, disappearing faster than if someone had physically wiped it off his face. Sabotaging? Blake leaned forward, disbelief pulling his features tight. You're saying I'm out there messing with another singer's tour? Me? Jimmy swallowed, clearly regretting the entire setup. It's just something people have been discussing. I thought maybe you'd want to address it. Blake's eyes hardened in a way the audience had never seen from him on this show. The friendliness he usually carried like a trademark was gone in an instant. Address it? He let out a short, sharp laugh that held zero humor. Jimmy, you blindsided me with this. You expect me to sit here and smile while you dump garbage rumors in my lap? The tension grew so thick it felt physical. People shifted, some lowering their phones, unsure if recording this moment was appropriate or dangerous. Blake leaned in, lowering his voice but sharpening its edge. You know me. You've known me for years. Do I look like the kind of guy who sneaks around taking cheap shots at people's careers? Do I seem like the kind of man who needs to knock someone down just to climb up? Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it again, rattled. Blake, I didn't mean… Oh, I think you meant plenty, Blake cut in. He pointed at the card in Jimmy's hand. You planned to bring this up. It's right there on your cue card. You made it part of the conversation. Jimmy forced a laugh, but it came out thin and awkward. Well, you know, keeping things interesting. Interesting? Blake snapped. Since when did accusing someone of backstabbing become your definition of interesting? This isn't one of your comedy sketches, Jimmy. The studio dropped into complete silence. Even the cameras seemed to hold still. Blake's voice wasn't raised, but the disappointment, frustration, and sting of betrayal made every word land with force. If there was a problem, if there was even a hint of truth to this rumor, why didn't you call me, text me, ask me like a friend? Instead, you throw it out here with cameras rolling so you can get a reaction. Jimmy's voice shrank. I just thought the audience… The audience? Blake repeated, shaking his head. No, you did it for views. You did it for headlines. The crowd murmured with a cocktail of discomfort and fascination. Every face was drawn to Blake, unable to look away. He exhaled heavily, trying to get control of his emotions. I came here for fun, to talk music, laugh, play your silly games, and now I'm defending myself on national TV because you chose shock value over friendship. The lights above seemed to dim, or maybe the room just felt colder. When the show cut to commercial break, Jimmy instinctively moved closer, trying to talk, but Blake didn't budge. He stayed seated, eyes locked on the floor, jaw flexing like he was holding back a storm. Stage hands zipped around, pretending not to listen, though every one of them leaned ever so slightly toward the conversation. The band members whispered nervously, their instruments resting unused in their laps. It was the quietest they had ever been. Blake, Jimmy said softly, stopping a few feet away, maybe we can reset. Start the next segment clean. Talk about the new album instead. Blake slowly raised his head, and the stare he gave Jimmy made the host freeze mid-step. It wasn't just frustration. It wasn't just anger. It was betrayal, the kind that came from someplace deep. Betrayal, Jimmy, Blake said quietly. If you think we can just start fresh after you ambushed me with that garbage, you're living on another planet. Jimmy's expression shifted to panic. I wasn't trying to ambush you. It was trending, and the producers thought… No. Blake stood abruptly, the mic on his jacket jerking as the wire pulled tight. Don't hide behind your producers. You're the one holding the cards. You're the one choosing the questions. You could have shut it down. The stage manager called, "Back in 5. The sound cut through the air like a cracked whip. Jimmy looked pleadingly at Blake, silently asking him to cooperate, to calm down, to act like everything was fine. But Blake wasn't giving him anything. The band started a hesitant riff to welcome the return from commercial break, but it sounded timid, almost apologetic. Jimmy mouthed, "Please." Blake didn't react. The red recording light flicked on. The applause sign flashed. The audience clapped with forced enthusiasm, unsure if they should even be cheering. "We're back with Blake Shelton," Jimmy said, his forced smile trembling slightly. "And, everything's good. We're good." He made a circular motion with his hand, trying to get the energy back. "So Blake's new album—" "Hold up," Blake interrupted sharply. The audience instantly quieted. Jimmy blinked as if he'd been slapped. Sorry, did you want to say something?" "Yes," Blake said, turning directly toward the camera. "I want to set the record straight." Jimmy froze. This was the last thing he wanted. Blake placed a hand on the arm of his chair, grounding himself, and stared into the lens with a steady, powerful intensity. "To anyone watching," he said, voice controlled but clearly burning, "I have never sabotaged anyone's tour. Not once. Not ever. If I've got a problem with someone, I say it to their face. That's who I am." The audience murmured, locked in. "And since we're clearing things up," Blake continued, "I think it's pretty low that my character got dragged into question on a show where I've always come as a friend." The word friend struck the room like a pointed arrow. Jimmy's hands tightened on his desk. "Blake, I didn't mean—" Blake turned to him. "Stop, man. Just stop. You messed up, and you know it." The audience held its collective breath. A woman in the second row clasped her hands over her mouth. A couple in the back exchanged stunned looks, whispering, "Oh my God, this is real." Jimmy's shoulders sank. "You're right," he admitted quietly. "I went too far." Blake didn't soften. "Yeah, you did." Silence stretched again before Blake sighed, letting a small piece of his anger fall away. "I came here expecting laughs, jokes, the usual good time. That's what this show is supposed to be about. But you blindsided me, and now we're stuck in this mess." Jimmy swallowed hard. "I really am sorry, Blake." "Apologies don't erase damage," Blake said, his voice quieter now, but heavier than ever. "Words stick, especially when said on TV." The whole studio seemed to freeze. Even the cameras felt still. Jimmy looked down, defeated. "Is there anything I can do to fix it?" Blake didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood slowly, adjusting his jacket with calm, final movements. "Yeah," he said. "Next time, just be a friend, not a headline chaser." He gave a subtle nod to the audience, a silent thank you, and turned to walk backstage. "Blake, wait!" Jimmy shouted, but Blake didn't look back. His boots echoed across the stage in steady, deliberate steps. Not angry, not rushed, but firm. The kind of walk that meant the conversation was over. The audience erupted into nervous chatter. Jimmy sat frozen behind his desk, staring at the empty chair like he wasn't sure what reality he'd just stepped into. The cameras cut to another emergency commercial break. Within minutes, every social platform exploded. Clips spread at lightning speed. People dissected every gesture, every breath, every tense moment, hashtags multiplied by the second. Commentators weighed in. Fans argued, industry insiders whispered, and by the end of the night, the entire late-night world buzzed with one undeniable truth. No guest had ever walked off Jimmy Fallon's show the way Blake Shelton just had.